All right. This presentation is going to be a short one about preparing for the data collection of your full-scale project. The three basic steps to it are to take stock of what you need as far as resources, recruit, hire, and train your staff for the data collection, and then manage and supervise the research team as an overall unit. When we talk about taking stock and identifying inventory, you want to look at what you need as far as special equipment, printing or scanning or duplicating, what space you need to do the research itself and the analysis, any special training needs for you or your staff, and then whatever other supplies you may need. Then you're going to want to do one good proofread or several, depending on what kind of pilot testing you did. But a good proofing to make sure that your spelling is in check, you have good word choice, the sentence structure makes sense, your directions and your questions are clear, you use good grammar, and active voice. These are also great recommendations when writing a research paper. When we talk about recruiting, hiring, and training staff, you want to make sure that your field staff are folks that are normal to the space that you're going to be doing your observations or surveys or data collection. When we think about indigenous field staff, we think about things that I like to think about. You would not send a cowboy from Wyoming into downtown San Francisco to do surveys. And just, maybe there's some novelty to that in some aspect, but you need somebody that fits in the local culture, social circles to make the folks comfortable and to solicit the best information. You want to make sure that you do an orientation and a training on how to perform the data collection from the beginning of the process, from once they leave the office until they return, and even into data input and stuff like that. And then you want to make sure that all field staff have identification on them so they are well identified as a field staff or researcher, and overall a letter of introduction so that they can have some type of proof of who they are. And a lot of times what I look at this is writing a letter to say, this is somebody I've got working on this research project. If you have any questions, please contact me directly as the principal investigator. So that it relieves the burden of the researcher in the field as far as explaining the reasoning and all that. And they may do that a little bit anyway, but you want to move that to the principal investigator, the principal researcher, so that the field staff can focus on their job as data collection in the field. Overall, depending on what your project or your research is about, is going to make the team be larger as far as scope, wider as far as number of individuals, and so forth. It could be a team of one or a team of hundreds, depending on the project. You want to make sure that you identify all the members of the research team and where they report to as far as supervisor or leadership. So, depending on the breadth of your team would depend on how that's structured. If you're looking at a smaller team, maybe it's just everybody reports to the principal investigator or the researcher. However, if you've got a wider team, you may have to have different leadership positions. And then overall, you want to focus on quality control. So how can I go about making sure that everybody's doing the best job possible to get the best and most honest, truthful, straightforward data possible? So here we've got some typical research team members. The principal investigator or the lead researcher is the one that's going to be leading the project and has responsibility oversight of the entire project. The project coordinator is somebody that's going to coordinate the data collection workers in some manner or observations in some manner. So depending on the scope of the project, will depend if you have one or more project coordinators. And this is useful so that this person doesn't have to necessarily worry about the finances and stuff like that. Then you have field workers or frontline workers, data collectors, in that range of, and these are the people that are boots on the ground, frontline folks that are getting the information or facilitating the research project. Then we have a statistician and data entry specialist. These are people that enter the data into some kind of matrix or software so that the statistics or analysis can be performed. And then a lot of times you do have an administrative assistant, especially if you've got travel involved. This is very useful. Somebody that can kind of just keep track of all the paperwork of where people are and what are they doing. and also with the finances as well. A good administrative assistant is golden in large-scale projects. Then, as we think about quality control, we want to make sure we're checking the accuracy of interviews' recorded responses. So, looking at what responses are written down in whatever form and how accurate they are. For example, if you're asking somebody's income and the recorder puts down 45, well, maybe that's somebody's age, but it's very unlikely somebody has an income of 45. Or it could be they meant 45,000 or 4,500 or something like that. So we want to make sure that we got accurate data recorded. And that goes forward into site editing of the paper questionnaires. Is when we hand out a questionnaire and we get it back, we want to make sure the frontline folks, the data collectors, are looking at it to make sure that people fill it out correctly. And so this could include anything from misinformation, like, oh, I'm sorry, you forgot to put your age or your zip code or your income or whatever it may be. Or if they circled two things, like, if they circled two different ages on a survey or two different or three different things on as far as each question, you want to make sure that only, it's filled out correctly, basically. And that's both common mistakes and people that aren't really paying attention, or they don't know what really they're looking at, or they're just trying to speed through it and answer whatever they can. So site editing makes a big difference. And then you're looking at data verification and making sure that individuals completed the interview or questionnaire. And that's kind of going back to the site editing too, is making sure that it's completely filled out and filled out correctly. And then sometimes you can say, hey, I see on here, what was your zip code again? And they'll repeat it to you orally, and you're just going to make sure that what's written is what they say orally as well. And that's just making sure that they're telling the truth and they're not just kind of going through the motions. And finally, I thought I'd mention a couple different time management tools that are pretty useful. The person loading chart is used to itemize individuals assigned to each task and estimate the number of hours needed. So this can give you a good idea when you're developing a budget of how much you need to spend on specific things as far as tasks are concerned. And then you look at a Gantt chart, and it's used to illustrate the calendar time projected for each specific task. So if you're looking at how many hours a specific task takes, and then you have to do it 3 days per week, and it's going to take over a period of 6 weeks. So using these two things can really give you a good estimate on project timelines and project cost. And that concludes our short discussion on preparing for data collection.